I'm in the mood to be mad about something, so I'm gonna tell you about the Song of Achilles and why I didn't like it. So, first of all, this book, I finished reading it. I was like, this book was so bad. And then I go on Goodreads and it's like 5 stars, and everyone's like, this is the most beautiful book in the world. It made me cry so much. I'm like, girl. So we have Patroclus, right? And he's like head over heels in love with Achilles. Like, he loves this man so much. No offense, but did Achilles do anything in this entire story? You're gonna promise me a love story, and then you're not even gonna give me any chemistry between the characters. It's just like this bland ass man and this other bland ass man, and for some reason they're desperately in love with each other. And this book, it spans from Patroclus being like 8 years old until he's like a grown man. So somewhere in that time, we probably should have seen them falling in love, right? You would think. Like, nothing happens. Like, Patroclus just decides he's like obsessed with Achilles, and Achilles is just there being an asshole. Like, no offense, but did Achilles even like Patroclus? Because he didn't act like it. So this book, it has an explicit sex scene between a 15-year-old and someone who, like, today is their 16th birthday. And I'm like, why is this the only explicit sex scene in the book? Actually, there's another explicit sex scene. It's a sexual assault scene. I don't think I don't think I've seen anybody talking about that, but there's like Deidamia or whatever her name is, like literally rapes both Achilles and Patroclus, and we see the scene where she rapes Patroclus. It is an explicit sex scene, and I'm like, why am I reading this? It made me extremely uncomfortable. The sex scene between the two 15-year-olds made me extremely uncomfortable. And then for some reason, so we have established that like Madeline Miller isn't afraid of putting sex scenes in this book. So we have 2 explicit sex scenes, and every other sex scene in the book is like, ooh, and then they were kissing, and then fades to black. So you are comfortable writing a sex scene between 2 children and a sexual assault sex scene, but for some reason, all the sex scenes between 2 consenting adults are fade to black. Why? I was just deeply uncomfortable reading a lot of this book. Also, there's a lot of like foot imagery. Like, why? Why the is Patroclus so obsessed with Achilles' feet? I was reading this book and I was like, this is kind of weird. Like, he keeps talking about his feet and like his perfect feet and like how shiny and perfect they are. And then I thought I was smart and I was like, oh, Achilles, like Achilles' heel. Like, that's a thing that I know about. So we're gonna get all this like subtle stuff throughout the book, like Achilles and his perfect feet. They're so perfect. They're like infallible. But then he's gonna get like stabbed in the heel, and that's how he's gonna die. And it's gonna be like his feet were these like perfect things, but then they end up being his weakness. When Achilles dies, it's because an arrow goes through his heart. His foot is not involved at all. So like, what is an Achilles heel? When his heel wasn't even his weakness. It was just getting stabbed in the heart, which should kill anyone. Did Patroclus like Achilles? Like, I know he was obsessed with him, but did he like hanging out with him? Because it didn't seem like it. I definitely didn't get the vibe that Achilles gave a Patroclus until after he was dead. And then what's her face? Briseis was like calling his ass out. Like, you didn't even care about him when he was alive. Like, he means twice as much to you in death than he ever did to you when he was alive. And I'm like, yeah, call his ass out. Did she lie though? Did she lie though? And we didn't even explore that. Achilles was just like, I wish I was dead. I'll be dead soon once I kill Hector. Okay, then just kill him already, because I'm getting sick of this story. This book was so long, or at least it felt so long, but it also felt like nothing happened. Like, how are you gonna make a war book boring? There were even scenes where it was like Patroclus's point of view, and he was like, blah, 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 and he was like, just last night when I was hanging out with Achilles at the bonfire and we were kissing and being cute. I'm like, could we have gotten that scene in the book? Like, why are you talking about these scenes that actually would have been interesting to read or made me feel some type of emotion in like a flashback, when all I get to see is your goofy ass wandering around doing nothing while there's a war going on? We got the POV character of a person who doesn't do anything for the entire book until the very end when he puts on Achilles' armor. And maybe it's just because I didn't read the Iliad, but I didn't see that coming. Like, it felt so random. It was so out of character for Patroclus because he hated fighting and he didn't want to die. So why would he do that? Swear to God, Patroclus had one character trait, and it was that he was obsessed with Achilles. And Achilles had one character trait, and that it was that he was a greasy white boy who punches holes in the drywall. Can you name one redeeming quality of his other than him being hot and good at killing people? Like, he was such an asshole. Such an asshole. This man has a whole ass kid. Like, I know that he didn't want to have sex with Deidamia, but he did, and he has a son. And that's it. He has a son, okay? He has a son. And Patroclus isn't like co-parenting. And when Patroclus is talking about like, oh, Briseis and I were talking and like she wants to have a kid, and Achilles was like, she wants to have a kid with me. And Patroclus is like, no. And then Achilles is like, oh, okay. And then he's like, goes to sleep. And then he's like, wait, she wants to have a kid with you? And Patroclus is like, yeah. And Achilles was like, do you want to have a kid with her? And Patroclus was like, he was like thinking about it, but then he saw like how friggin' jealous Achilles was, and he was like, no. He has a kid, okay? Achilles has a whole kid. Like, if you want to have a kid with Briseis, Achilles should let Patroclus like chase that dream. Because if Patroclus wants to be a dad, he has no choice for that. Because he's gonna be with Achilles for his whole life. And Briseis was offering that she would be Patroclus's wife, have kids with him, and let him still be in a relationship with Achilles. Like, she was gonna let him have the family that he wasn't sure if he wanted, but I got the vibe that he wanted to have a family with her, and the life that he wanted with Achilles. He could have had it both with Briseis. That's what she was offering him. And I think he should have gone with that. I think Briseis treated him better than Achilles did. Like, you know? At least she talked to him when he was alive. At least they hung out. She didn't just go off to war and kill people and then come back and be like, oh, I killed so many people today. It's like, okay, Achilles, are you gonna ask Patroclus about his day? No. Are we gonna get any conversations between you two? Like, are we gonna get dialogue in this book? No? Okay. Like, he's such a jerk, and he's so pissed all the time, and like cares so much about what other people think of him. And Patroclus is acting like he gets to see this like soft side of Achilles that nobody else knows about. And at the end of the book, he's talking about like all the great things that Achilles did, and it's literally like a list of 4 things, and one of them is like he played the lyre good. Like, that's not like a moral judgment. That's just a thing he can do. Plus, like, everything else, he's like, Achilles, like, spared Briseis' life or whatever. And Thetis is like, yeah, he literally only did that because of you, though. Exactly. Like, any good thing Achilles did was because of Patroclus. And Patroclus was still like, he's so great. Like, he has this soft side that, like, nobody else gets to see except for me. Well, I would have liked to see it since I'm reading this book and I'm supposed to be rooting for your romance. Hello! Achilles and Agamemnon's, like, dick measuring contest where Achilles was like, I'm never gonna fight for you again because you dishonored me. Are you stupid? And then when Patroclus was like, Achilles, people are dying, and Achilles was like, I don't care. And Patroclus was like, well, I care, so can I like wear your armor and go fight, and then people will think you're a good person even though you're not? And Achilles was like, yeah, sure. First of all, why would he agree to that? Second of all, what was he expecting to happen? And third of all, if you're willing to put your honor on the line and have people think you went out there, like, how is that different for your reputation than you actually going out there? Like, all he cared about was his reputation, right? And his image. So isn't the image of him on the battlefield going to impact his image? Like, if he said he wasn't gonna fight and then he's seen fighting, even if it's not him in the armor, everyone thinks it's him, and that's the point. So I just don't understand like how it made sense that Patroclus was the person in the armor, and like now Achilles doesn't have to like sacrifice his honor by fighting. Like, Agamemnon, when he sees that, is gonna think you're fighting, okay? And he's gonna think you're surrendering. You care more about Agamemnon's opinion of you than you do about Patroclus's life. And then you have the audacity to be heartbroken when Patroclus dies and like snuggle with his corpse and all this other weird and not even bury him so that his soul can be at peace. I'm like, and I'm supposed to feel sorry for you when these are the consequences of your own actions? If you just gone out there and fought, Hector never would have killed Patroclus, and that is literally the truth. Achilles expects me to feel sad for him because he learned that his actions have consequences, and for the first time in his life, he didn't get what he wanted. And he's just gonna cry about it. Briseis handed him his ass. She deserves so much better. Oh, can we talk about the women in this book and how all of them deserved better? We have Patroclus's mom, who is so stupid she can't even drink wine without spilling it all over herself, and like her newborn baby, someone like took her newborn baby, like the nurse, and gave her a friggin' pillow to hold instead, and she was like, I love my son, holding a pillow. Like, are you a idiot? Why was she so stupid for no reason? And then we have Achilles' mom, goddess of cock blocking, showing up out of nowhere to be like, don't have gay sex. I'm like, okay, Jesus, we get it. Like, she was so evil and like vindictive for no reason. Well, she had a reason to be vindictive. It's because she got friggin' raped, just like every other woman in this book. Every woman in this book, if they showed up, safe to assume that by the end of the book, they were either going to be dead or have been raped. Most likely both. So what was the point of that? We have Deidamia, who is literally a sexual predator. She raped both Achilles and Patroclus, but we're not going to talk about that. And she was like this hysterical sobbing mess when we're introduced to her. Like, the first thing she says is like, no, and she's like weeping and hysterical, and I'm like, we love strong female characters. If there was like one or two passive females in this book, but like every other female character was interesting, it would probably be fine. But the fact that every female character in this book, except for Briseis, was so passive and had no autonomy. And the autonomy that Briseis did have, she only had because Patroclus told Achilles to like save her ass out of the kindness of his heart. Like, she was 2 seconds away from being raped by Agamemnon twice in this book. And Achilles was just gonna let it happen too. He was literally gonna let it happen for his own honor. He was gonna sacrifice Briseis's like bodily autonomy. And the thing is, I'm sure that that's how it happened in the original Iliad. I didn't read the book, but I'm sure that the women in the Iliad were treated just as badly as the women in the Song of Achilles. But the difference is, Song of Achilles was published in like 2012 or 2013, written by a woman, and it's a retelling. A retelling doesn't have to stick like plot point by plot point to the original, because then there'd be no point in retelling it. You're supposed to be able to take like a modern perspective, or like your perspective as a woman, and maybe do something more with these female characters instead of having them just be literal symbols of the men that raped them's honor. It just made me so uncomfortable that every single woman we were introduced to got killed after like 2 seconds, or was a sexual predator, or was an idiot, or like they all died. Like, they were literally all dead. Like, name one female character that survived this book. I guess Deidamia, but like, she's a rapist. I drank a huge cold brew this morning. I got a venti. I've never gotten a venti before. But I was like, I need that caffeine. I don't think I needed it. So anyways, this book was so bad. I think the prose was very beautiful. I don't mind. People were like, oh, it's all purple prose. Like, I did see some negative reviews, and a lot of them were like, it's all purple prose. Like, I don't mind a flowery book. My favorite book in the entire world is The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien, and that's like the definition of a war book. That's all purple prose, but I love it. And I actually really enjoyed the writing style of this book. There was this interesting thing that I noticed where like all the metaphors that this book used were everyday things that Patroclus would have known about. It's like almost as if Patroclus was telling this story. Like he used a lot of things that like a person living in ancient Greece would have had everyday contact with. He compared things to like olive oil or, you know, certain plants or certain situations that he was familiar with. There was actually a line like towards the end of the book, he was describing Achilles' mom speaking, and it was like she placed her words like stones in a mosaic. And I thought that was just like a really interesting way to describe speaking that I've never heard before. And it would be relatable to Patroclus because mosaics, ancient Greece, like it makes complete sense to me. It really brought you into the world building because it really was believable that these characters would talk like that. However, basically everything else about the writing sucked ass. I really am trying to be kind here, but it seems like Madeline Miller is not well versed in subtlety. Every character in this book that we were supposed to find unlikable was literally like the most extreme caricature of a bad person imaginable. Like she picked like one defining character trait for every character, and that was like all they were allowed to do for the whole book. Like Achilles' mom, I forget her name, Thetis, she was like, she hated Patroclus. That was literally her only character trait, and she would say out loud so many times like, I hate Patroclus. Patroclus is no good for you. I wish you would break up with him. I hope he dies. And it's like, oh my god, we get it. We get it. We get it. Same with Patroclus's dad. I know he wasn't in the book for very much, but like every time he was on screen, he was just there to say about how much he hated his son, and I'm like, oh my god, we get it. I feel like bad characters in books are more interesting when their evilness is more insidious and more hidden and more subtle, because if you can empathize with like an evil person, that's interesting. If an evil person just goes around being like, I am evil, I hate Patroclus, I hate Achilles, I have one emotion and it's rage, it's like, okay. I'm sure the characters in the actual Iliad are pretty one-dimensional because is it one-dimensional or two-dimensional? Pretty flat. Because that story, it's like an epic, and I'm pretty sure most epics and most like of those old like Greek stories are honestly from any culture. Everyone else in the story is just kind of like there to serve a very basic narrative purpose. But again, if you're doing a retelling, you have freedom with this. You could make Agamemnon very complex. You could make Odysseus complex. I mean, he was probably the most complex character just because he was like a bad guy, but also he was smart and funny, whereas every other bad guy was just like a bumbling buffoon. But even Odysseus like sucked. Everyone in this book sucked is basically what I'm getting at, including Patroclus and Achilles. Including Briseis, who was the only character in the book I cared about. She was still like, everything she did was extremely predictable. I never read the Iliad. I don't care about the Iliad. These characters were so predictable. That's such a problem. Like, nothing in this book really shocked me, except for when Patroclus was like putting on Achilles' armor and like ready to die. That did shock me because Patroclus never took initiative at any other point in the story. That moment, it seemed like it was supposed to be like a huge deal, and I feel like it should have been foreshadowed more. Like maybe, ooh, you know what would have been interesting? If we got like some jealousy on Patroclus's part. Jealousy about like Achilles, the way people treat Achilles. And then when he puts on the armor, like he is doing it for the sake of saving all the people who are dying. But I think it would have been cool if like after he put it on and rode out there and saw the way people were revering him, if like something changed in him and he was like, ah. I think that would have been pretty interesting if we got to see like a corrupted Patroclus. I genuinely don't know why people love this book. Usually if I read a book and I don't like it, but I see positive reviews, sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, well, I personally didn't like it, but I understand why you like it. But there's some books, like Eleanor and Park, if you like that book, literally, you're stupid. Like, that's the only thing I can say, because that book is racist, and it's badly written. I don't know why you like it. Same with Carry On. This is not a Rainbow Rowell diss track. I just hate everything she's ever written. It's like best book of the year, and I'm like, she is literally so racist.
Really, Carry On? Like, are you kidding? That book is so badly written. Like, could someone tell me the plot of Carry On? Also, the world building. Hello? Like, I know it's supposed to be like a fan fiction in universe, so maybe like it makes sense in Rainbow Rowell's racist little brain that like, I don't need to do world building because this is a fan fiction, and people who are reading Carry On in like the fangirl universe would already know about this wizard school. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And I read Harry Potter.
Anyways, this is not a Carry On roast video, maybe someday. But yeah, Song of Achilles. Why do people like it? I think it probably has something to do with like straight women fetishizing gay people's relationships. Do you guys think? Do you think? What other reason is there for an adult woman, a heterosexual adult woman, to write an explicit sex scene between two 15-year-old boys? I can't think of one other than fetishy bad ones. And I noticed that a lot of the people like rating this book 5 stars are women, and also a lot of straight women love this book, and queer women love this book too, like bisexual women. I don't personally know of any lesbians that have read this book. I mean, I did, but I hated it. I don't think gay men like this book. So who was it for? And if the answer is straight women, why is there an explicit sex scene between two 15-year-old boys? I mean, that shouldn't be in any book for anyone unless the point of it is to make us deeply uncomfortable and see like that an abusive situation is going on here. We're supposed to root for this relationship. We're supposed to root for this relationship. Like, this relationship is supposed to be the emotional core of the book. And it was so boring, and nothing happened. And Achilles didn't even act like he liked Patroclus, let alone loved him. And Patroclus didn't have any good reason that I saw to like Achilles. Achilles was an asshole to him. Achilles was a jerk. This book... My roommate walked in, and I became very self-aware for 1 minute about what I was doing. And, yeah. On Goodreads, I rated this book 3 stars because overall, I did like the writing, and I found reading this book to honestly be enjoyable because every time something stupid happened, I was like yelling at the book. I haven't read for fun in many years. Possibly, I was gonna say possibly a decade, that's not true. Probably like 6 years since I last read a book for fun. And 2021, I made it my goal that I was gonna read for fun this year. And I set my goal to 20 books, which I know is not a very impressive TBR, but it's like 2-ish books a month, a little less. To go from 0 to 20, you know, it's pretty impressive if I say so myself, if I reach it. I'm already technically ahead of my goal because I read 2 books in January. So, you know, reading a book and feeling so like invested in it and wanting to care so hard about it and like yelling and feeling emotions about a book is something I haven't experienced in a while. And honestly, it made the reading experience fun. Like, I'm not the type of person where if I read a book that I don't like, I'm like, God, I just wasted so much time. I think it's fun to read bad books. It's how I survived high school, okay? High school English classes, I could tell you everything I hate about like every single one of Shakespeare's plays. I could tell you, oh my God, I could rip Cracker in the Rye a new butthole. But you know, like, I read these books. That's why I'm able to form such strong opinions about them. I didn't hate this book. I didn't hate it as much as I hate Catcher in the Rye. So that's saying hardly anything, but you know. I rated it 3 stars because I think it was well written and I enjoyed this experience of reading it, but I don't understand how people are rating it higher than that, considering I found it to be, I don't want to say problematic, because I think a book can have quote unquote problematic elements and still be a very good book. I don't think, you know, life isn't unproblematic. The characters in those books should be able to be bad people and do bad things, just as long as the book is like a commentary on why that's bad and people don't get rewarded for bad actions. But even then, like, I don't know. I don't think every book has to be like PC, unproblematic. Like, I wouldn't have minded necessarily for a book to have like sexual assault in it, but this book, it had an explicit sexual assault scene that was like completely brushed off. Patroclus wasn't traumatized by it. He just like moved on with his day. And I don't think Madeline Miller even like realized that she was writing a rape scene. Like, I think she just thought, this is uncomfortable. Actually, I don't know what she was thinking. Why would she put that in her book? If a scene like that happens in a book and its purpose for being there is social commentary, there can be value to having a scene like that. I don't know if there's value in having like an explicit scene like that in a young adult or new adult book, but I just feel like it was handled so weirdly. Overall, like, the treatment of the female characters in this book and the lack of emotional impact in Patroclus and Achilles' relationship, even though that was supposed to be what the book was about, I just couldn't rate this book high. Anyways, there's pot stickers in the dining hall tonight, so I'm sick of talking about this book. I'm gonna go eat dumplings and do my stats homework and maybe start reading a different book. I'm doing the like black bookathon, but not really. I'm not like following any strict prompts. I haven't even seen any. I'm just gonna exclusively read books by Black authors this month, which I know this is a short month and I only read 2 books in January, so I'll probably only read 2 books this month. I kind of want to read The Vanishing Half, and I want to read An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. I've heard nothing but good things about The Vanishing Half, but I heard good things about The Song of Achilles too, and that book was a piece of ass. So we'll see. Anyways, I don't know how to end this. Gonna go get pot stickers and do my homework. Okay, bye.